So I'm going to start this video talking about everybody's favorite creator, Mags Visaggio. So I was going to do a review on this comic, Eternity Girl #3, but it was just going to be way too angry and bitter and pissed off and whatever. So I just, I didn't get around to it. I wasn't going to do it. Because I read this and it was like, whatever. And then the whole thing with Diversity in Comics and Jawbreakers and Antarctic Press happened. And what does Mags Visaggio have to say about the whole thing? Well, after Antarctic Press releases their statement about how, separating the art from the artist, and they take as, neutral and carefully worded view and viewpoint as possible, what does Mags Visaggio has to say about that? Well, she just says, as long as the book isn't coming out. And that really, really pissed me off, because I agree that Mags Visaggio gets too much crap from us. It's like, Mags Visaggio is not a significant person in the industry. There's no reason to go after her as much as we do. However, that doesn't mean that I, have any real amount of respect for her. I thought that Transformers vs. Visionaries was an interesting idea, although I do agree with Diversity in Comics that it ended really stupidly. I thought that this had an interesting premise, although I forgot that it was basically taken almost word for word from the Element Woman issue of the old Sandman series. But the fact of the matter is that when you get into this, it is a very sort of self-indulgent, self-important comic. The original video I did on this was something along the lines of Diversity in Comics misses the point or something, because he kept focusing on how selfish the main character was, which is true, and I thought that the comic was going to end with her coming to terms with that, and now I'm realizing that it's not. That basically this comic is not going to end with her realizing that, hey, maybe it's a bad idea to blow up people's houses and lash out at people just because you lost a job. It's going to end, I don't know exactly how it's going to end, but that's not how it is. So I think that on that he was right. And so Mags Visaggio, the comeback with Mags Visaggio from both Mags and other people who were against us was like, look, you shouldn't judge a work just by the person, whether you like them or not. You should judge a work on its own merits. And then Mags Visaggio, it turns out, is just as petty as Mags believes Diversity in Comics to be. Because all Mags cared about was that, hey, the book, Jawbreakers, it's not coming out. Which is to say that it's not coming out in print via the normal Diamond distribution system. It's still coming out, and that's what annoyed me. The Jawbreakers not coming out the normal way, it doesn't hurt Diversity in Comics. I think sales have more than doubled since that happened. Since people like Mags and Mark Waid got this mob riled up and got Antarctic Press to back down. It didn't hurt Diversity in Comics, it hurt Antarctic Press. And it seems like I believe the head guy that actually stepped down as a result of all of this. So you have this small-time publisher that has supported creator-owned comics since the mid-90s, or if not earlier than that, and they've been doing it consistently in a non-ideological way for 20, 30 years. And then they have this chance to get a book that may have been a big hit for them, and they just drop it because people like Mags Visaggio whipped up this mob that just went after them. And it was just really infuriating when I saw this tweet. And then when you read the rest of this, like I said, even if you can separate the art from the artist, this whole thing is basically about just how annoying the main character is. And that's where I got to thinking. It's like, part of the reason I didn't want to do a video on this is because why are we doing videos on people that we hate? Timothy Lim, the guy who partially wrote and drew this, and then obviously Brett Smith, who's the colorist on Jawbreakers, among other things, and then Mark Pellegrini, who's also a good writer. It's like, these guys, people like this, are the ones that we need to support, not people like this. So this comic sucks, but I'm not doing comics anymore on stuff that I read knowing it's going to suck, or read knowing that I'm probably just going to rip into it. It's like, this sucks, it does, and I can tell that. It's like, Diversity in Comics is right. Mags is the kind of person that the industry doesn't need. And what's really funny is that Diversity in Comics is actually proving the SJWs right, and he's doing it in the way that infuriates them the most. Because when the SJW started coming back against us, what they were saying was like, oh, there's all these new forms of distribution, there's all these new forms of ways to build an audience, ways to reach out to people. The comics industry is changing, and diversity in comics, his whole thing was, no, we have to have a mainstream. Now he's just done with the mainstream, and he's helping other creators, forge a way to build up an audience completely outside the normal way of doing that. So it's kind of funny to me that he's proving the SJW is right in a way. The comics industry is changing, but he's also doing it much better than people like, say, Kwanzaa were. I did that video last week on Vox Day's Salt Hero, but like I said, that would actually surprise me. I thought, like a lot of people, it was just going to be political tripe, no better than something that, say, Tom Taylor would do, but it was actually kind of interesting. Then you look at My Hero Academia. I've actually done a video or two on this, or at least I shot a video on it, and then the whole thing with Antarctic Press happened, and basically some of the things I said in it became irrelevant, and I wasn't sure how to approach this. I don't want to take this out of the package. For one thing, it's kind of humid right here, right now, to the point that I'm going to have to start bagging and boarding all these comics, and putting them in boxes and storing them properly and such. But I don't want to risk damaging it. This is a really good comic. It's really funny. Even if you don't like Trump, you're going to like this comic. I'm actually have a very brief cameo in it, or at least the channel name does. I would show it, but like I said, I don't want to take this out. I want this to be special, so this is going to stay in its bag and board. But I've also got some other comics here that I think are worth pointing out. And there's also some online things. So the big thesis of this video is, support creators you don't like. And this goes for any YouTubers that might watch this. But the problem is that when you watch these, when you do these YouTube videos, you find that good reviews tend to get less views than really negative reviews. So that's why it's not really a review of any comic. It's just pointing out something fairly obvious. Support creators that you like. This one right here, Executive Assistant Iris. This was written by Blake Northcutt, who's sort of been a friend of the Diversity in Comics channel and the community for a while now. And I don't really know what her politics are, but she was one of the people who looked into some of these SJW hate mobs that get whipped up, and it turns out that it's only like sometimes as few as like 10 people or 15 people that are involved in it. And then Executive Assistant Iris, I remember seeing this on the stand like 10 years ago, thinking it was interesting, but not really understanding it. The idea is that Aspen Comics, which was founded by Michael Turner. Michael Turner was one of these, really big artists, and he was one of the first ones who really broke off and started like his own company that was like fairly successful. Aspen was the whole point of Aspen is like basically sexy, scantily clad women doing like action movie type things. That was the kind of thing that Michael Turner was really good at drawing and depicting, and so he just made an entire company based entirely around that. So this issue right here, it's basically all about Iris realizing that the world is changing and the whole assassin / bodyguard game is changing. So she ends up getting taken up by this firm that basically gives her all these neat toys to do what she does, which is help people, protect people. The money's right. And it's kind of interesting. It shows Iris realizing that she's getting older, that her getting cut like this on her arm was the kind of thing that probably 10 years ago wouldn't have happened, but now she's, late 20s, early 30s, something like that. She's getting older, so she needs help. So it's like, just like the comic book industry is changing, just like how it's different to get, just like how building an audience is not the same that it used to be, so too is Iris realizing that. And then you've got Chuck Dixon. Of course, Chuck Dixon is a venerable writer that created Bane, created all these different concepts and stuff, and it's hard for him to get work at the Big Two nowadays. Now, I don't know the full story behind that. There may be more to it, but this, which I covered in a video months ago, it actually has gotten better. Like, as the story has ramped up, it's gotten better. There were some kind of annoying things in the first issue that later issues have not picked up on, so that's good. And then Bane Conquest has been solid from the beginning, and it continues to be, even in this issue right here. Plus, if you look on Indiegogo, Chuck Dixon has an Indiegogo with some other, what looks like really talented artists. It's called Kill All Men, and it's this, basically, it's in the style of this old, like, kind of exploitation movie, where the men go to this island of the Amazons, and they have to survive, and that sort of thing. Right? Like, kind of an old school premise, but it looks like it's done really well. So that Indiegogo, it's doing okay, but it's not doing gangbusters the way that Jawbreakers Lost Souls and the way that Cyberfrog with Ethan Van Sciver have been doing. And there's really no reason why it shouldn't be. It's like if we want different kinds of writers, different kinds of artists to succeed, if we don't want the normal standard two-company system that is just really stultifying and is just filled with a lot of really bad actors, then we got to support people that we like. And so Chuck Dixon's Kill All Men, hey, why don't you look at that? This is probably going to be the last Marvel comic I ever buy, or at least for a very long time. And the reason I bought it is not because of the premise, it's not because of the story, it's not because of the series, it's not even because of the writer Chip Zdarsky, who went from being awful to being merely hit or miss. It's because of the artist Jim Cheung, who I thought Jim Cheung was off of this series, but it looks like he came back for at least a few more issues. So, that's the thing, right? Supporting the kinds of comics that you like. I mean, that's the name of the game now. I feel like that we have spent over a year now that the community came together, it got bigger, it started to coalesce, it started to gel, and I think we've definitely are at the point where it's no longer about ragging on bad comics, but about finding and supporting the good ones. A lot of people support a blanket boycott of Marvel. I kind of agree with that. A lot of these bad actors that I was talking about, it seems like they're much worse at Marvel than they are at DC. Like I said, the only reason I got this was because of Jim Cheung. And all the rest of them, yeah, they can go. They can go hang. And then, this is one that's kind of interesting. The only reason I know about this one is because of Ethan Van Sciver tweeted out something about this when it was a Kickstarter. And I think that Powerverse, they still have a website where you can get this. Victoria Black, it's basically kind of like, she's like a assassin or a hitwoman or something like that, who's also a mom, and then she gets betrayed by some people that she knew. Pretty standard story. The art, as you can see, it's okay. It's pretty good. The big thing about this is that it has attitude. It's become so popular to see, people like Kwanzaa and people, so many like really soft depictions of African Americans that it's like, I don't think that's how most African Americans see themselves. I don't think that's how what the average black person is attracted to. They're attracted to, cool stuff. So this is definitely cool. And you can see that the Kickstarter thing, it came with this, unique print right here. It's like, this is definitely cool. Bradley Golden is the writer here. He's pretty good on social media. But, yeah, this video, the whole point of it is, like, find people that are not toxic, find people that are good, find people that are positive creators, and support them. Don't support something just because it has a popular IP to it. If it's done by a bad creator, you're just encouraging that kind of work. Support people that are actually, like, part of the solution rather than part of the problem. So I think that that's the end of that video. All of these may eventually get individual reviews on their own. It's difficult for me to make videos consistently, as you can tell by the last time that I released a video. But yeah, people like Blake Northcutt, people like Timothy Lim, and then other, veteran writers like that, like Chuck Dixon, Jim Cheung. Look for stuff like that. Stop just finding comics to hate for the hell of it. Anyway, tell me what you think about all this. Tell me what you think about the changing comic book industry and how we can be a part of that change. Like, comment, subscribe. In any case, this is Unranked Chevron, signing off.